Mark Rogers TV back with you on college football in the South's oldest rivalry. Between the Hedges, when Georgia hosts Auburn coming up this Saturday, we bring in Jamie Hancock of Preps Nation to talk it up. Jamie, let's, before we spin it ahead to the Bulldogs game and this big rivalry game, let's take a quick, painful look back at what happened in Jordan-Hare Stadium last weekend. And two things that I really need to get your opinion on here is, number one, a veteran quarterback like Nick Marshall, Reese Dismukes, and all the starts that he has under his belt at center, and the flawless exchange over and over and over, hundreds of times during competitive games in the SEC, and then two missed communications in the span of 7-8 minutes of game time in the fourth quarter, and how that possibly could have happened.
We could armchair quarterback the call, on the second and goal. As far as you look at it, and you could say, well, you just don't run the option in that set. And I'm sure the coaches look back and say maybe we should not have put the ball in harm's way at that point. You either run the quarterback power or you give it to Artis Payne, but they run that play consistently. So that's just something that happens. The mesh point got messed up between Artis Payne and Marshall. I think both felt that they could keep the ball in that situation. You're going to put it on the running back for clamping down because he's supposed to allow the quarterback to ride it up in and pull it out if needed. However, that's just something you look back and you probably second guess at least putting the ball in harm's way on second and goal from the two. As far as Dismukes goes, he's been an incredible Auburn football player since leaving Spanish Fort. As a high school player and coming to Auburn, he started every game that he was eligible to play in, and in his Auburn career. And I cannot recall one bad snap from that young man. So, having played the center position in college, there can be some communication issues. A lot of times, having not played in front of a crowd like that, there are still issues of hearing what's going on, and everything that's going on in the center's mind. He's looking at protections, he's doing this, he's doing that. He can even be watching the play clock. So there's not really a lot of insight into what was going on in his head. I can promise you that Reese Dismukes, as a 4-year starter, a guy that's going to have 50 starts in his career at the center position, he's going to say it's his fault. And I'm sure on the other end, Nick Marshall's probably going to try to take some of that off his center and say, I should have done something to help him out. Then on the other end, Rhett Lashley was trying to take some of the blame by saying that they should have gotten things out there and done faster. At the end of the day, it happened. And it's just one of those things that you don't expect between the two veteran players there with Marshall and with Dismukes. And they've taken it the right way in the sense of nobody has pointed the finger in anybody's direction except for themselves, but there's several people trying to take the blame, and I have to respect that.
Texas A&M quarterback Kyle Allen was the #1 rated pocket passer coming out of high school. So no question the kid's got the talent. In his first career start at home, facing a friendly crowd against Louisiana Monroe, he looked pretty miserable in generating just 21 points. He completed less than 50% of his passes. The improvement that he made from week 1 to week 2, pretty considerable, especially considering the circumstances and the hostile environment. How much was Kyle Allen? How much of it was an Auburn secondary that just didn't make the plays?
Good bit of both. I think that he felt like he had the Robertson clan from Duck Dynasty running around in the secondary at Jordan-Hare this past weekend, and that's the way it kind of felt a little bit as an Auburn fan as well. Kyle Allen, watching him, he has a lot of arm talent. The kid has a really, really strong arm, quick release. I like what I see. However, let's not anoint him. A lot of people were anointing him in the second quarter. The first play, I'll give him credit. It's a 60-yard pass. If you notice, the receiver was turned loose, and Mark, you and I probably could have scored on that if I didn't pass out before I made it to the end zone. So there were several things that happened during the game that Kyle Allen did do a good job of. He kept his composure, and that's great. That's what you want to see out of that young man in his first trip on the road in front of a big crowd like that. But all in all, he managed the game, and he did what they asked him to do. They made a lot of safe calls, a lot of screens to wide receivers, a lot of tunnels, things of that nature to give him some confidence. He did make some good throws, but a lot of that would have been completed by probably 70% of the quarterbacks in the FBS vision. There were guys running free. They had, several busted coverages. Once again, from the Auburn side, you hear miscommunication, and that's something that it's starting to become just a little bit overused in the sense of at some point they have to learn to communicate. And so I believe a lot of that has been taken away by the Whitehead suspension. And you saw in the second and third quarter, all of a sudden he was out on the field with a different number. So he got back on the field and immediately had an interception. Was everything alleviated once he got back on the field in the second half? No. But again, I think that guy, he has started at Auburn for 3 years and was the leader in the secondary, and then all of a sudden one day he's gone, and now you have guys that are less experienced running around. Jonathan Ford stepped into the secondary this year for a couple of games. He looked fantastic. For several games he's looked as if he's been lost. So he's not the only one. The entire secondary has struggled at points. But Jonathan Mincy, probably the most disappointing of that group, simply because he is a senior guy that came in, played his first year as a true freshman as a 17-year-old, so he's young, but he's been there for a long time, and he knows his assignments, he knows the system, he knows what he's doing, and he has struggled quite a bit as Auburn's premier corner this year, and that's something that is a little bit disappointing. I'm sure he's a great young man, but struggles are just evident in the secondary.
Jamie, we watch these games each week. We break down the teams, the personnel, look at the statistics, from every possible angle. The thing that can't be analyzed until we see it actually play out from week to week is the guts of a team, the mindset, the poise, the determination, all those intangibles. So we've seen it before. A team like Auburn, with all the expectations of going to a national championship, shattered basically in 1 week. There are scenarios in play that could possibly lift them from number 9 in the country to get them back into it, but most likely that was an elimination game for Auburn. So they could come out fighting next week, and they could be ready for a rivalry game like they should against Georgia. Or maybe some of these guys are kind of lost and had so much riding on the season that they don't have it in them to maintain the energy and get back off the deck. I'm asking the impossible, but what do you think the mindset of this football team is?
I think they will come out and they will be in a really bad mood. I think that it's probably a positive from their mindset standpoint. They may have bought into this team of destiny stuff that we've heard over the last couple years, and that everything that they touch turns to gold. That may be something that they started relying on maybe a bit too much. I don't think luck ran out. I don't think that was part of what happened at Jordan-Hare. But I believe that it's very possible that their mindset will be of a nastier thought process right now. I think they're going to be agitated and irritated, and they're going to play very hard. Most Auburn people are tired of hearing about Todd Gurley. We know he's coming back. We know he's a fantastic football player. But, are you going to tell me that Georgia is not distracted by all the Todd Gurley talk? It has to be a distraction. Most people are going to be happy to have him back. That's true, but there is a distraction with him coming back. They've played pretty well without him. Of course, he's the best running back in the country, so having him back is going to be a benefit all in all. But the one thing that Auburn's defense has done this year is they've been able to stop the conventional power running game, and that's what Georgia is going to bring with Hutson Mason and Todd Gurley, because Mason is not going to stretch anyone with a speed option or a spread option look. So Todd Gurley, Chubb, they're going to be a conventional running back, downhill power type game. That is the one thing Auburn's defense has been good at, and we'll see how that matchup takes place. They could cave in. Their mindset could be just to give up and quit. I just don't believe that's going to be the case. I think they're going to come out and they're going to fight, and I believe that Georgia's going to have a long day in front of them, I think, attitude-wise for Auburn. And one thing I wanted to mention about the secondary, we're all over them. We're talking about them. A bad secondary can be made to look really good by a good pass rush. And so far this season, Auburn has not helped out their secondary with the pass rush at all. They did at Ole Miss, and that was something where the secondary was not at least shredded. And so, you know, a lot of the problems has to look at the pass rush once again. And in fairness to those guys on the back end, they're not getting any help up front.
Jamie, this Georgia football team has been labeled in recent years as a team that's very inconsistent. They bring in top 5, top 10 recruiting classes. They have star players all over the field. They flood the NFL with prospects. They lose 2 or 3 games a year seemingly because they're inconsistent or maybe not coached as well as people might think that they should be. I think a lot of that's overblown. If you look across the country, how many teams are really that consistent week to week? Those teams are winning national championships or at least getting very close. Very few teams are consistently great week to week. Georgia, again, labeled as an in team this year. They dropped one against Florida that they probably shouldn't. That kind of came out of nowhere. They give up 400 yards rushing in that game. Just your assessment of Georgia personnel and how good this football team is coming into Saturday.
Talent-wise, I think they're very good. They're a top 15 talent-based team, especially on defense. Now, that defense has not come together under Pruitt like you would have liked to see. Todd Grantham left Georgia, headed towards Louisville, and that's something that you felt like that defensively they were going to be fine. That hasn't so much been the case, especially up front, which should have been their strength. They're big, they're physical, they look really good when you just take a look at them on the hoof. They look the part. And the Florida game was extremely shocking, the fact that they got pushed around the way that they did. Florida only ran 6 or 7 plays in the second half. They just kept pounding it right at them, and it just makes you wonder, why was Florida able to do that, and they've been able to do that to no one else. And no offense to Matt Jones and the other young man at the running back position, both good-looking athletes, good football players. Everybody in the stadium knew they were going to run it. Nobody thought they were going to throw the ball to Harris. The first 3 passes with Harris in the Florida game, I think Muschamp and the staff thought was a good idea. The next 3 they attempted, they didn't even want to attempt it, but they felt like they had to. And so I was disappointed in Georgia's overall effort in that Florida game, and that's something that they may come out with a different mindset that Todd Gurley's back. They may feel invincible now that he's back, and that would be very bad for Auburn. I do believe that at the end of the day, Todd Gurley is elite. Nick Chubb is good. I'm not convinced by their offensive line at all. It's a young group. It will be a good group. I just don't think that they're great right now. Wide receiver, they're just so-so. Malcolm Mitchell is very good story behind that young man. If anybody hadn't had a chance to see the Malcolm Mitchell story, they need to kind of look at that. He's a good, a good story, a good wide receiver, but he's kind of by himself to a degree. Blazevich, the tight end, is talented, but he's a true freshman. You can only put so much on that young man's shoulders. So offensively, I think they're a little bit limited. I don't think Hutson Mason is going to be one of those guys in Georgia lore like we talk about with Aaron Murray and Eric Zier. So all in all, I think Auburn has a good opportunity to go to Georgia and come away with a win, and that would set them up as, like you said, they're probably out, but their only possible scenario to even think about getting back into any kind of talk is to beat Georgia, have Alabama beat Mississippi State, and then beat Alabama, and somehow find their way into the SEC championship game and maybe, come out in some kind of argument with several other losses that we may not, see coming over the next few weeks.
Hey, Jamie, before I let you go, would love to get your take on Duke Williams' situation. He's out. How that affects the passing game. Sammie Coates and Williams, when they're both on the field, obviously 2 extremely impressive specimens in regards to their playmaking ability. They're just NFL-type size, speed, high-pointing the football, the whole deal. How taking away Williams draws the attention to Coates and how that could affect the Auburn passing attack.
It may affect Auburn a lot because Nick Marshall has really fallen in love with Duke Williams this year, and he's by far Marshall's most targeted receiver. The benefit is that Sammie Coates appears to be 100% or close to 100% healthy and appears to be the deep threat that he was last year. That's something that's been missing. It's going to be a little bit on Marshall, who has been very consistent the last few games. He's looked really good. You're going to also have to see if second leading receiver Quan Bray brings anything else to the mix, but I don't believe he will. I think he is what he is. He's a a third receiver, a secondary type guy, do some things in the flats, get the ball in his hands. It's going to be up to probably a young man by the name of Melvin Ray to probably step into that spot and see what he's going to be able to do. He caught a touchdown pass in the national championship game last year. He is, in theory, a walk-on, but he's a young man that's committed and signed with Alabama out of high school, played Major League Baseball for 3 years in the Dodgers organization, I believe, and then walked on at Auburn. He's a physical kid, a lot like Williams in size. He has a Williams skill set as far as strength goes. It's hard to match Duke Williams' uncanny ability to make catches in traffic. And I don't believe he's going to be able to replace that. Nobody can in this conference. You know, Duke Williams and Laquan Treadwell, to me, were similar, except Treadwell may have been a little faster, Williams a little more physical. So that's a big loss for Auburn. I think it'll be up to Melvin Ray and C.J. Uzama to maybe try to pick up some of those pieces and step up in the passing game and make some things happen. Credit one thing from last week, Cameron Artis-Payne maybe quieted a lot of people with his game last week in a loss. I think it went somewhat unnoticed that he went for over 220 yards in that game and really came away impressing me just from the standpoint of, you know, he just keeps doing what he's doing and putting numbers up that are, you know, pretty nasty.
Jamie Hancock joins us from Prep Nation, talking up the South's oldest rivalry, coming from Sanford Stadium this Saturday with Georgia hosting Auburn. Still a whole lot on the line with Georgia, hoping for a Missouri loss in the last 3 weeks to clinch an Eastern Division championship, and for the Auburn Tigers at number 9 in the country, still with maybe some slim hopes getting back into the college football playoff talk. Jamie, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Absolutely, Mark. Anytime.